Hello, today's 5 Minutes with Gavin Scott is about Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, one of the great short novels in English literature. Joseph Conrad is regarded as one of the greatest writers in the English language, although he didn't speak English fluently until he was in his 20s. He was born in 1857 as Joseph Conrad Korzeniowski in Ukraine, which was then part of Poland, which was then part of the Russian Empire. He was the only child of an aristocrat, writer and revolutionary called Apollo Korzeniowski and his wife Eva. In 1861, when Conrad was 8, Apollo was arrested for being part of the resistance against the Russian Empire, imprisoned in the dreaded Warsaw citadel and sent into exile. Seeing his father taken away, said Conrad, was his first terrible childhood memory. There was worse to come. When Conrad was 11, his mother Eva died of tuberculosis, and for years afterward, the motherless boy and his father were shunted from place to place in the Russian Empire, Apollo doing his best to educate his little son as they went, encouraging him to read Victor Hugo, Shakespeare, and Polish romantic poetry. And in 1869, Conrad's father too died of the same lung disease that had killed his wife, leaving the boy an orphan. A kindly uncle took him in, but he was by now a difficult, unhealthy child, largely uninterested in education and determined to go to sea. When he turned 16, his uncle gave him an allowance and sent him to the great French port of Marseille to fulfill his dream. He spent nearly 4 years in France and on French ships, sailing around the Mediterranean to the Caribbean and the West Indies, and then in 1878 joined the British Merchant Marine as a steward, an apprentice, an able seaman, a mate, third, second, and finally first, and afterwards captain. And in 1890, he got a job with a company running the Belgian Congo. It's out of this experience that he wrote his famous short novel, Heart of Darkness. It tells the story of how Conrad's protagonist, Marlowe, travels up the Congo River to find an incredibly successful ivory trader named Kurtz, who has succumbed to madness and megalomania. Conrad was one of the first to attack the hypocrisy behind colonialism and to denounce the savage degradation of the men then exploiting Africa. But I think some of Conrad's most effective writing about the morally corrupting effect of colonization comes even before Marlowe arrives in the Congo, when he's a passenger aboard a ship travelling around the coast of West Africa. Here it is. I left in a French steamer, and she called in at every port they have out there, landing soldiers and customs house officers. Day after day I watched the coast crawl past, the edge of a colossal jungle, so dark green as to be almost black, fringed with white surf. The land seemed to glisten and drip with steam. Here and there specks showed up, tin sheds with a flag flying above them. Settlements centuries old but still no bigger than pinheads on the untouched expanse. Day after day we landed more soldiers and customs officials. Some, I heard, got drowned in the surf. But whether they did or not, nobody seemed to particularly care. They were just flung out there, and on we went. Once, I remember, we came upon a French warship anchored off the coast. There wasn't even a shed there, and she was shelling the bush. Her flag dropped limp like a rag. The muzzles of the long 6-inch guns stuck out over the low hull. The greasy, slimy swell swung her lazily up and let her down. In the empty immensity of earth, sky, and water, there she was, incomprehensible, firing into a continent. Pop would go one of her 6-inch guns. A small flame would dart and vanish, a little white smoke would disappear, a tiny projectile would give a feeble screech. And nothing happened. Nothing ever could happen. It was like a pilgrimage into a nightmare. Conrad wrote many great books, including Lord Jim, Nostromo, and The Secret Agent. But in my view, his description of that French warship firing pointlessly into a continent managed to encompass not only the colonial experience, but much of the 20th century in a single stunning sentence.